have to do studies, right? But how you design it. For music design, what I think of is you have to design all concepts for your whole music from step one to step eight, and for music. But what are the design studies? So you need to timetable for studying what specific output to create for study design.
Probably not just the scientific.
Okay, so let's move to chapter 8. Oh, we don't have any chapter 8.
Oh, we can compare. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Can we answer even page 24? Is it discussion?
say that again. It's also quite important because I would say it what is the policy? It's which aspect that this piece of so after something was said because he's not that is also independent. That's why I had this word published. When we study domestic coverage, it may sound like serious. It's just like to whom would this piece of that's copies be used when we use this? Who is gonna benefit from this little? Let me say, when we want to do a that kind of research, yes, a lot of times for our personal interest, but more than that is that who is going to benefit from the new findings from this science or science? If what you have found, the criticism goes to why do you want to do this again? Spending time after just because you personally like to do it. I think how you are might really depend. I think that is useful to articulate and maybe
they're related to study design.
Yes.
Okay.
It will benefit maybe
Discussion from
some
you?
people, those people that
Okay, all right. Just try to do your best because
it is
very sketchy and
doing
discuss.
research is always a hard because you're going to dive into very specific topic and very specific knowledge.
So they told me that the reading format did not increase chapter 3. The format of chapter 3.
There's a group that
Would you double check?
and it
Yeah, I said that I didn't. So
it doesn't have to be a large
to revise it.
but it's proving that your research
This
is
is
valuable or not.
chapter 3.
It is not valuable.
I said chapter 3 4. I said 4. 没有，可是下礼拜是3分之一，不是，因为所以你帮我加一个不一样的。
Yeah, you can go
So this is the updated reading log. OK，因为他就已经有人在读下面，所以他们就说少了这一条。交了，可是他3、4都写了吗？
他写了2，这礼拜就交了。
哦，那可能跟他讲一下，下礼拜3、4，所以你可能要 remind 他们，下礼拜是3、4，然后 here's the most updated reading log。
Does it just emphasize the design? Again, it's a I'm going to see paragraph 1.
I see. I know. I'll explain that to you later. We just explained we're going to work about it as the later chapters. So it's only introduction to yeah. And also this one. So the next class every Saturday we'll move all of this
So we have to
random.
explain.
Yeah, this I would say it's more the term used by all the things. You will learn how to do it. Yes.
Does it just
Okay,
emphasize
but in our class we will talk about how to do
the
all of
importance
this.
of research?
Okay, very good. Okay.
Is the sentence emphasizing?
All right. When we come back, because I know you're gonna take a 10-minute short break, right? So when we come back, each group you're gonna give a very brief response to the questions that you were assigned, and then I'll give my response. Okay. All right. So is it almost the time for your time break, right? So take a break. Okay. And all right, just take a break, and then we'll come back and talk.
What about you? Any questions for me? Oh, my response to that. The same. Did you talk to him already about the status and then about doing the remote? In the end, yeah.
Yeah, I have talked to her.
Okay.
And she said we had to talk to him already. Scholarship status is she's considered as a scholarship for perhaps applying or to the college for essential then because it would be double honors. Yeah. That's okay. So I'm just going to go and she says something like sound you are
Okay, yeah, you were either me or you were thesis professor. Yeah, so then I can sign it.
what do you want to work? Comments project because the box certificate is possible to upgrade this.
Until what?
Unless we have a good performer for the next year, maybe I should pass. I don't know. It starts to feel working. But also the side, other than like the plus radio or the plus supervisor, I follow this year, but I don't know who is he or she.
Oh, the classroom classes, Professor Youth, and yeah, Professor Xie. Professor Xie is your quantitative methodology course instructor.
She had
But I think she will have class meetings with people in the first year back to school. This person? Yes. Professor Xie.
I took her class and individual expenses.
Okay, talk to me because she's your class mentor.
So we have also have the class.
And the second year have a different. Every year assigned to yes, like the homeroom teacher. But yes, mentor, it is like Dutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And usually you don't go directly, usually you write to her. And then, yeah, introduce yourself, write to her, and say that you like to talk to her. And ask her, I think there are a few ways to do that. You can propose a few time slots to see when she's available to see you. And then ask her when is her available time slot. If the time slots you propose will then work, ask her when she will be able to meet you. Yeah, through like email. Usually, you could do that, but usually most of the professors, if they don't have class, they won't stay there. Yeah. I think it's very different from high school or the university you are from. Here in this university, many professors, they would stay home and work, because unless they come here for meetings, faculty meetings or meeting with students, or for their class.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Oh, I could also share this information with the class too, because you might think, I know for some universities that their professors are always inside their office. Yeah, but this may not be the case for many faculty members here. 没有啊，我刚刚迎面而来就不好，面少的脸。I like him. It's good. It's very good. Yeah, I like his stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I the first one?
No.
Maybe.
Yeah. My friends, teachers,
Okay.
happy together.
I think personality-wise or personal traits-wise, I also see that connection. Yeah, not physically. I think.
Very, very happy.
I think there's a way of how he has
Tomorrow, we'll get back to
Is it tomorrow? I thought it's today. Is that Monday?
Tuesday.
Check.
From the message, from the message.
I thought, okay, double check. If that's Tuesday, then.
It's Monday.
Yeah?
Sorry, it's my bad.
Okay.
So later.
So, will they come? Will they come here? Will she come? Ah, we're gonna meet in our.
Yeah, you're off.
Okay,
You're
okay.
Okay, so later on, I'm going upstairs.
Okay. Okay.
아, 미안하지. I'll ask a question. I will try to say something because in the book most of my translator. Okay. No, it wasn't the castle. Art.
So on our model, the index is only 16. See, like the mine last week the best was supposed to be 18. Then we who is 杨球没有，然后我们这些没有这个。刚刚来立嘛，对，那就是他这边这边对，所以这边是3个。
不可能，他刚写错嘛。
少了3个，应该是属于1个，那这里是多一个
I wanted to do that. Thank you for reminding me.
新的。
Okay, all right. All right, let's walk through and your response, and then I would also like to respond. So group 1 over there. So group 1. And I think again for lots of, I think many of you raised the same questions. Okay, so let's listen to group 1. What's your observation or your response to this question? Study design versus research design. Group 1? Okay.
So research design is for the whole frameworks of your research, and the study design, like we have the introduction, literature review, methodology, and conclusion, and your result, right? So the methodology part is more for the study design, like how you design your data collecting, how to set up your participant, and those things are the study design for the data you want to use in this research is for study design, and the whole framework is for research design.
Okay. Is that the same kind of response you have this group? Yeah? Okay. Let me give you this is how I always describe
to my students, if you have a study with only study design, it's like a person with only your neck, but without your head and your body. But what we really need to have is when you have this part to support, then you need to have very solid what? Introduction, particularly literature review. Then your methodology here, okay? It is only that you have a very solid statement and argument and very thorough literature review. Will you really come up with this NAC, this methodology? And is NAC very important? Definitely. Hey, how can you survive? How can you still live without this part? No. Okay? And then afterwards, when you have this part, you have your findings, you have your discussions, and your conclusion. Okay? Each part of it, it's very important. This part, extremely important. However, you wouldn't have to have this part without this part. And this part is your introduction, particularly your literature review. Okay, so next week we will talk about literature review. A lot of students have difficulty finding appropriate data or literature and references. So next week, that's the part. If you have this in mind, how can you miss introduction and literature review for your study? Definitely not. Okay, all right. So is this clear right now for this, the differences between these two? Okay, all right. And then I would say the second one is also related because, again, I think what you have found and how it was found. This is how part, and then this is your what part. Don't you think your what part has a lot to do with how part? Definitely, definitely. Okay. So, but then I always like to talk to my students like this. A lot of time, you will have a students giving you, wow, amazing methodology. However, this methodology doesn't fit with this part, let alone this part. Do you think it's possible? Do you think that's possible? That means that you could probably, conduct very amazing steps. Like this is what I do, 1, 2, 3, and what I would like to do in this methodology. Or these are the participants, and this is how I would like to collect the data, analyze the data. However, when I ask him why do you want to conduct this study? And then the author probably cannot really say more very specifically why they want to conduct the way of how the methods they use for their research. So there's a lot about why this study is conducted this way. Okay, you will see we have this kind of conversation a lot. I always ask you why. You said that you would like to invite this group of students as your participants. My question is always, why? Why them? Why not others? Okay? And how are you gonna invite them? Okay. So this is how and what part, the relationship between these two. Okay? All right. And then, let me move on to, and I know that some of you have been asking about sampling, how to sample your participants, and how do we know? 2 questions. How do we know that, how many? One is how many participants are representative enough, particularly for qualitative research, right? we wouldn't be able to find all the participants, or you wouldn't be able to interview, observe all the participants. But the question is, so how many? How many? And secondly, how do I know that this small number of participants is representative? It is representative. I can say, yes, I have a very clear idea about this group of participants. How would I know? So these are the two key issues. Later on, after I explain this, I'll ask you to explore. Okay. As for, you will see some of the terms, for example, randomly sampling, non-randomly sampling. All these terms are related to quantitative research methodology. These issues, sampling issues, will be addressed next semester in your qualitative research methods. So please do not worry. However, we will work on qualitative sampling today, okay, to give you some idea. Okay. Now, the last, let's see the next one. Okay, once again, question 6 about sampling. We will work on that. 7 is again about sampling, okay? And then, okay. Number 8, there are two broad categories of reports, quantitative and qualitative. You need to combine the qualitative and quantitative skills. The question is, will combining qualitative and quantitative skills lead to inaccurate research findings since they are quite different in diverse aspects? Interesting. Wendy, why do you have this concern that they will lead to inaccurate findings?
Just like what I said, because they're quite different. Because I'm not really sure about the certain details about the two research reports. So I think I need more detailed information too.
Okay. Let me give everybody it's a general view, but I think it's also very important to you. Let me give you this. Okay, if you ask me, okay, what's the major difference between these two? Okay, some people will ask you, I remember last week, Frank, you said that you have a quantitative brain and you are looking at trying to equip yourself with a qualitative perspective. And I would say both of them serve some purpose, okay, and it's important. Quantitative, it's a way usually used by large quantity of numbers, and its major work is to predict and infer a phenomenon based on quantitative analysis. So if I say that this group has a significant difference, means that if you do this, then you're going to make a significant difference. Let's say if I want to say, I want to know if this teaching method is going to work. So I have two groups. One is control group. They didn't receive this method. And the other one is the experimental group. I give them this method. Okay, and all the conditions are the same. Then I want to see whether it's going to be, my methods make any kind of impact on the experimental group. If the experiment shows, based on the quantitative measurement, shows that there is a significant difference, so that means my method really works. Okay, so it's based on quantitative analysis that predicts. It predicts if you do this, then you're going to see the difference. So that's for prediction, which is very important because we have very limited time and energy. So if based on some certain kind of experiment, you know something is going to work, then you will trust and you will try to decide whether you want to do it or not. However, qualitative approaches, it's usually used to describe the patterns or process of group of people or culture or phenomena we studied. And why is it important? Because I think a lot of us that we are educated ourselves to be teachers, to be translators, or apply linguists. In this sense, we usually have to understand a group of people. For example, your students, okay, a group of people, for example, your translators or your listeners. So the experience, okay, experience is very important. How can we get to know people's experience? A lot of time, probably if you ask them to give you numbers, for example, do you agree, strongly agree 5, strongly disagree 1, you probably wouldn't be able to really get to know their experience. You need to talk to them, observe them, interview them, even live with them, travel with them, so that you get to know their life stories, to know their experience. So these types of knowledge, two diverse, very different types of knowledge and understanding are crucial for us to understand, for us to predict the future, for us to understand the current phenomena of people of your interest. Okay. So Wendy, did I explain this to you clearly? So for this semester, we are learning to try to describe, to observe a group of people, to understand the phenomenon of our interest. Next semester, you are trying to use numbers, okay, to predict a phenomenon. Okay. Yeah? Questions?
Can I raise a further question?
Sure.
Because I read the other edition of our textbook, and the third edition of the textbook talk a little bit about the mixed method.
Yes.
And I would love to know more about how about combining both of the research
Okay.
methods.
Good. Two ways. Some people, some researchers, a lot of our graduate students, I would say the majority of our graduate students did a mixed, they employed mixed methods. Usually they have primarily quantitative research methods, like collect data using survey, then followed by interviewed with their participants. Can you see that? Yeah. So it's primarily quantitative, supplemented by qualitative. Okay. The other way around is primary qualitative. Okay. Lots of interview, lots of observations, but also supplemented some quantitative data. For example, like how many times they do this, how many times they show this, some numbers to provide another angle, another perspective to the qualitative data sets. So you see two types. A lot of times I would say mixed method is mostly welcomed. Okay, so far I think, for example, my advicees, mixed methods. Okay, I don't really have one research purely quantitative or purely qualitative. Okay, usually mixed methods. Okay, it's just like which one is heavier, more. Okay, yeah. Okay, now for the rest of the time, I would like to invite you to work on sampling because this is a task that you all want to involve. One is how many times the students come to me. Could I have 2? Could I have 4? Are 6 too many? Are 6 too too few? Good questions. Okay. How do I know that it's representative? How do I know how to select those samples? Very good questions. Okay. So let me show you 2 video clips. Okay. One is to show you why do we have to this kind of qualitative sampling. Then the second one is for you to find out the answers. Okay. Now. The first one. Where's Elena? Okay, should be here. Okay, this one first, okay? So this gives you an overview on sampling.
This video is about sampling specifically for qualitative research. So remembering that qualitative research is really focused on words and depth of knowledge, trying to gain as much depth into a topic as possible. Your sample for qualitative research is usually purposive. So remember that that means that you're selecting a specific group of people for a specific purpose. So if your qualitative research, you want to talk to Americans that have moved to China to teach, then you will purposely only select those people to be able to interview. So this will give you that depth of knowledge. You'll be able to draw from those people's experiences to get the data you need for your qualitative research. So this slide shows you the different types of purposive sampling techniques, and there are quite a few of them. But you have to think about how you're doing these sampling techniques, because this needs to be part of your methods of your research and something that you think about before you get started. So this is for qualitative research. So you want to know which of these sampling techniques is going to get you the people or the participants or the cases that'll give you the most in-depth knowledge of the topic that you're studying. And so there's a number of different ways to do this. So it would be really good to study this slide and even make sure to put all of these in your notes, because these are really important to know and understand at the beginning of qualitative research.
Okay. Let's
This video
see. So one of the
qualitative
keywords
research.
is for
So
qualitative
remembering-
research, qualitative sampling, okay, is always with a very clear purpose. So that means when you want to conduct qualitative research, you have to have a very clear purpose. What it is for? What is my purpose? Got to be very clear about that. So that's why usually the students will come to me, could I interview these two people? Could I? So then my response is always, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What is that for? What is your purpose? So there's always a purpose to fulfill. So then you start to decide who to invite to be your samples. Okay. Now, for next one part here is, next part. Then you get to see lots of terms, right? Is that working?
knowledge. You'll be able to draw types of purposive sampling.
Okay, now we have so many ways to sample our participants. Okay, so for this semester, the same. When you want to decide who will be your participants, think about these, I would say, let's forget about this, okay? A total of, how many? How many? Huh? So I would say this is the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different ways of sampling. Okay. So today, let's forget about this. Let's work on 6 of them. Okay. First. So what I would like you to do. This is also one of them. So what I would like you to do is, I will ask you to work on one of the sampling. Okay. Give an example. Think about what will be some of the cases that I would need to use this sampling technique. Okay. So this group, could you do the first one, maximum variation sampling? This one, you work on homogeneous sampling selection. Okay. For you two, work on typical case sampling. You work on critical case sampling. For this group, work on negative case sampling. This group, you work on opportunistic sampling. I think you could, I'll give you one more, mixed purposeful sampling. and YouTube, mispurposeful sampling. Okay, YouTube. All right. So where are you going to find information? Here. What you will be able to find the definition, okay? The definition from this, okay? Let me give you this. Ta-da. This one here, overview of sampling in qualitative research. So could you use your cell phone, watch this piece, because I think we could watch together, but I think you could focus on what you want to find out by watching by yourself, okay? Watch the video clip by yourself, then we'll come back, okay? Right? Watch the video clip by yourself with your partner, and then you will find out the definition, okay? And so after the definition, think about a case, an example in our daily lives that would use this kind of sampling technique.
So what will be
Okay. Okay. I think a lot of people yeah, and which is also important. First, I don't think it's hard. Negative one would be a lot of times when you try to, for example, I think this research like this teaching. So once you apply this kind of research it works for like 95% of the students. And for that to be more motivated. But then somehow they are 5% of the students. They, in fact, they demotivate, you know, and they even they are less motivated when such teaching approach was used. So they are your negative person. And why is it important to understand that? Yeah, or your assumption. Okay. So again, let's see. For some researchers, they want to see why such teaching approach dictates this group of small group of students. That's if that's their research group. If that's their research group. Yeah, then they focus on this so-called negative research. And yeah, and I think a lot of time they are arguing that certain theory doesn't work for some type of students. Yeah. Yes. And that's why negative cases is very important. Hi. Yes, for example, when this optimistic, it also has to do with research. For example, if I want to know how international students fit in to a new academic setting, originally I might propose also students coming from Vietnam, or like Malaysia, for example. Because my prediction is usually we have these major foreign countries. Then optimistic is that we have one more another country. For example, India, a very different country. It's opportunity, and it seems to enlarge my research. Okay, so then that's optimistic. It's not you can plan it. It is just like a natural setting and you happen to find. Okay? Your study could be expanded. Okay? So it's an opportunity. Again, I think it really depends on what is the purpose of your study? Yeah, what do you want to find out? So with this opportunity, your students coming from different countries, but do you want to know all the students from all over the world, or you want to focus on certain regions? Okay, so it always comes back to your purpose. Yes. If your purpose is to find out why there's always a group of people, a small group of people, students, who didn't find it helpful, and you want to know what's going on with this small group. Yes. But I think perhaps not in high school. What I know is from college. So if you're also interested in, I would say majority of the research will talk about the positive side of technology. But there are still some cases that students don't think it really works for them. And so as a researcher, you really want to find out whether they are negative cases. It's not, you are challenging the existing literature saying that perhaps not all the students feel it's positive or helpful. Based on experience, there might be students who feel that it's just too overwhelming, too many different modes for them to, mingle, to juggle. There's too many modes to learn. So, a lot of things to find out.
Okay, let's come back here. Alright, so maximum variation sampling, group 1, could you talk about what that is? And then what kind of research situation you might use this sampling technique? This group here?
Okay, so from our perspective, we think that the word maximum means that you would like to have a whole range of different participants.
Yes.
For example, if you want to do a research on high school students, then the high school would be a wide range. You will have boys and girls. You will have grade 10 to grade 12, different age. You will have students with different levels of learning. Yeah. So that is what we think maximum variation is. And you will have very low filters on having the samples.
Okay. All right.
Probably for researchers who want to examine a diverse group.
Yeah. Okay. So in this case,
Okay, I think you get the idea about maximum as diverse as possible, right? So but still, again, even though we want to be as diverse as maximum as possible, however, we wouldn't be able to observe or interview all the students, right? So for male and female, yes, so that you know that your participants need to have male and female. And you said you want to have like 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So make sure that you have students from these three grades. And also, you might want to, for example, if their English proficiency is a factor that you will definitely need to take into account, then their proficiency. You want to have some from high, intermediate, and also like low group. Okay, so it really depends on, if you said that for this research, I just want to know both genders, each grade of high school, different various types of language proficiency, then you have to make sure all those characteristics are considered and included as part of your participants. Got my point? Yeah. As for why you want to care about gender, why you want to care about their grades, why you want to care about their language proficiencies, then it has a lot to do with literature review. What did literature review inform you? Why these are important factors that you need to take into account when you want to address your research questions. Okay, why not, for example? Now I might ask, why not the place where they are from? For example, if they are from big city, if they are from remote areas, is that a factor or not? Okay, so many issues to take into account. Okay, this group here.
Regarding homogeneous sample selection, so I think we have. If you want to conduct more research in the kind of like sampling techniques, we have to, we have to the more specific criteria that we choose in this sample, the more effective that we get in the result. For example, if you want to conduct a research about the high school student, we have to give a lot of criteria for this. If you want to choose some kind of high school student with high performance in class, that is one criterion. And another criterion is that they have to be boys with higher performance in class, and we could add a lot of more details, more criteria for this in order to get more specific information about it, and we will get a really effective result. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think the key point is about homogeneous. Homogeneous means what? What does it mean, homogeneous? They are like one group. Homo means the same. Okay. So, for example, you want to say, I want to know if this teaching approach works for this group of students. For example, high proficiency students. Or I want to know whether it's for low proficiency students. Okay, so because that's what you want to know. Low proficiency students, so you have to make sure that all your students have this characteristic. They are homogeneous. Otherwise, it's difficult for you to claim whether it works or not, because you have a heterogeneous group. You don't know whether. If your purpose is just for this group, only for this group, so then you have to make sure they are from this group. Okay, and then there are criteria for you to decide whether they belong to the same group. Okay, all right. Okay, so this group here.
We're in charge of the typical case sampling. Typical.
Oh, typical. Ah, so no one deals with extreme case? I skipped that one. Oh, okay. All right.
Where am I?
Typical.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so we select like 4 classes from 4 different levels of high school in Taiwan. Not level, like 4 different high schools in Taiwan, but based on their like entrance score.
Okay.
And then we select 4, top one, second one, third one, last one. And then when we're gonna do the sampling, we just choose the middle one, 2 and 3.
Okay.
That's what I think typical case sampling is.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe when we are trying to do a research on the effectiveness of a certain teaching approach, we are not doing the homogeneous selection because we don't want to set a certain group. We want to check if it can work in general classes in Taiwan. So we need to select a high school based on their 会考 grades. So if you know, we can set a standard about 1A, EA, 4B, or something. That is in the middle of the level. So if we can choose that kind of public scores, we can get the general data from that.
Okay. All right. So I think good. The way of how they define typical is, for example, they don't want a too good or too slow one. They're kind of in the middle. That's how they define typical. Okay. The way of how I define typical could be, for example, if I think about typical in Taipei City, for example, then you could ask yourself, what is the typical class in Taipei City in elementary school? For example, what is a typical EFL classroom in Taipei City? You might have some idea, right? Like class size, it's not like in the elite school, neighborhood. It's just a typical one that this few or these few classes could represent typical English classes. Okay? So it really depends on, goes back to how you define typical. Okay? What are some of the factors and elements that constitute typical classroom? And that's a way for a representation. You know, some people want to know, okay, how representative your samplings is. Okay? All right. Well, okay, so yeah. So you're going to talk about.
So we are going to talk about the critical case sampling, and this type of sampling is for a small group of people. We select them, and from that group of people we get the most important information for our research. Like if for example I am working in a hospital, like I'm a researcher in a hospital, and the patients who are coming in for the treatment, after they are finished with the treatment, I give them a survey to know how they felt about the services and what are the things that we can improve in the hospital. So these information will be important for the development of the hospital. So those are the important things that we know from the samples.
Okay. Jennifer, what constitutes the critical? Why are the English sampling critical? The way of how you sample those, you mean the patients, why are they critical?
Like for the development of the research or getting an information for a research, so they will be an important aspect for that.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the technique or the criteria, right? Critical case sampling. Select cases that are known to be important, okay? I know like sometimes not all the people, all the participants have the equal access to all the information. So you only select people who know the information that you want to know. So then they become critical samples, critical participants. Can you think about some of the cases? For example, there are lots of like negotiation, some of the like be hidden under table negotiations, for example. Okay, so some of the cases are very critical. Only they know the information you want to know, not all the people. So they become critical cases. Okay, in the classroom, who are critical in the classroom? Who are critical samples?
You don't know.
I mean, there's so many teachers here.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, very interesting perspective. What about, for example, if you're a teacher, right? When you look at your students, who might be the critical cases for you? Let's see if you are here, and then you, like this. Who might be the critical cases for you? The assistant, okay. She might know something that I don't know, okay. Or between you and the assistant, okay. So the critical, you will get to know who might have the critical information, okay. That means that the information cannot be accessed to everyone.
Can it be students in experimental school?
Yes.
Public school or hybrid school students doesn't know how they
Mm.
to
Yeah. Or sometimes, for example, the Ministry of Education, they are curious about certain kind of research or teaching approach. So this approach only gets to experiment with certain kind of classes or university or schools, or even one of the university or one of the classes. So that group of students become critical informants for your study, because not all the students have the access to the information or to this teaching method. Okay, all right.
Professor, can we say as expert case summary? Like, all the experts know that.
No, I don't think it's only experts. You know, they are critical, but they don't have to be experts. Okay, sometimes they just experience something that not the normal or the general people would experience. For example, what kind of experience? Should I say that? Sometimes it's an unpleasant experience. Yeah, special education or experience. Like recently we have a lot of Me Too experiences, right? That's quite unpleasant experience. They become critical participants that you might be, if you want to know more about the cases, then you need to interview them. So not everyone could be critical, right, participants. Okay. Some of our international students probably don't know the Me Too. You could probably want to explain that to them later after the class, okay? Typical, critical, negative. Okay, let's continue. I'm sorry about the time, but a little bit. What about negative?
The negative, like the research technique is like the certain parts that does not fit in your like theory. For example, maybe when it's like the technology is very like people use a lot like technologies during education, and it's common to use like videos or like audios or image when you're teaching the students, and the kids normally like motivate. Like they have like higher motivation to learn with those materials, teaching materials that are used in class, and they're like they have like higher interest in those. But they might be like a certain amount, like maybe just 5% or like less than 5% of the students that are not like really interested in those kind of materials.
Yeah.
And so that they have low motivations on learning.
So then they become what?
Like they're a kind of negative sample in this.
Okay. Do you understand that this negative? Usually, if you have cases that go against theories, you know, like a theory says so, but then, hey, here comes the negative cases. Sometimes these negative cases provide even more interesting insight. for researchers to find out why. Okay? Alright? Got it? Okay, so now let's move on to optimistic.
Okay, so opportunistic sampling is a kind of technique like relating to prediction. Like you guys, for example, like you guys have you want to do a research into how whether the student from in your class can fit the curriculum that you intend to teach. Then there will be some new kinds of student from another. For example, from basically usually your class would be a student come from a normal type background like the local people, the people come from usually come to Taiwan to learn, like Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. However, there are some kind of student that might raise like opportunities, like a student from another country, like Russia or Japan, something like that. So that is the opportunity to do a research. So it's really depends on the field that you want to do research into. So if you want to know about the student from another background can fit your curriculum, you will do research from those students.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the explanation. Okay, I think the key word is about the opportunity. Opportunity. Okay. Sometimes you design your research just based on, so what kind of opportunities you have. You said that, oh, I would like to understand the international's adaptation to graduate studies. But then it depends on how many international students you have, or the countries they are from. It really depends on the opportunity, the contextual factors that you are exposed in. Okay, so then you can say, oh, for this year we have students coming from 4 countries, so I'll focus on these 4 countries. Next year I might have another 5, and then I'll focus on another 5, based on the opportunity. Okay, all right, thank you. So last one, I would say, okay, so it's a mixed.
Okay, so mixed purposeful sampling is like combine 2 or more sampling techniques together, and it's like it's based on different methods of sampling and you still get the same result. It's like you can support your research.
Yeah, okay, very good explanation. Yes, it's mixed. Sometimes for example, you want to know typical case, but you also want to know some negative case. I want to get a general idea, but also want to know why there's a small group that they don't fit to that typical case. Alright? Or, for example, this extreme case sampling, you always have students who can do so well. You want to know why they are so well. But the same method, these are students that they can do it so poorly. You also want to know these 2 extreme cases. And then you only want to focus on extreme cases, so that's extreme case sample. Okay, so again, let's talk about, let me do this summary. The point about sampling for qualitative research is a lot to do with your purpose. Okay, so please, next time, when you want to ask me a question, you can still ask questions, but be prepared that I'm going to ask you, what is the purpose of your research? What do you want to find out? Because it has a lot to do why you want to find out. Then you will decide the sampling technique you will use for your research. Okay? Yeah? So this is pretty much the way of how I would organize the class, is that you will engage in group discussion each time with different group members based on how our TA, what kind of sampling she has. Huh? Randomly, blah, 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 blah. Rendering plus a little bit. Okay. Okay, secret. Okay. Yeah. This is yeah, rendering definitely is a big principle. Okay, so each time you will discuss with different group members, and then a little bit work. Like I always design some tasks where you can work in a small group. Will that be okay? I hope that you wouldn't feel like, oh, 3 hours so long, and you're suffering throughout the whole process. I hope that you still feel like time fades out quickly. Okay? Alright? Alright, so that's for today. I'll see you next week. Okay. The TL will send you the most updated reading log. Somebody told me chapter 4 format is missing, so she's gonna send you the most updated one. Okay?
Also, do we get to upload
Twice? Did you create 2 folders or 1? Okay, so once. Upload once. Finish 2 and 3 or 3 or 4? 3 and 4. 3 and 4 together. When you are done with the 2 chapters. Okay. Once. Alright, so I'll see you next week.